Well, hello everybody. This is Dr. Tausman coming to you live from Roanoke, Virginia. We're going to start this module. This is the last module, and there's going to be a lot of information in this last module, but we have a good period of time to do it, so I'm hoping we can really innovate you to do a good job with things. I got to tell you, I was so impressed with what you guys had to post about each of these 3 discussion board issues. I did not realize we had so many budding cognitive neuroscientists in the class. Don't have too much to say about that first discussion board, except you guys are exactly correct. Cognitive neuroscience, maybe the only thing I'll say about that is cognitive neuroscience is exactly what you were thinking, that it's basically one of those fields that links mind to body. Basically, cognitive is about the mental thoughts, the processes, language, all these cognitive processes. Body are the things about neuroscience. So can we actually process things and figure out when we have different emotions, when we have different thinking patterns, what's going on in the brain? So cognitive neuroscientists would study memory, they would study learning and what happens in the brain, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this particular unit. So I've given you an agenda here. What I would like you to do is basically listen to the acoustics here and basically type up some good notes. You'll use the book as well, and I have a few topics to talk about. One of them will be long-term potentiation, but that'll be the third of the 3 here. So the first one I want to actually talk to you about is actually in your book, and on the outline it looks like page 439. It's some very interesting research by Joe Ledoux. He did his research some time ago, but it was very interesting research. So let's see if we can find the book pages for this. There it is, on 439 of your book. The idea behind Joe Ledoux's work is he was interested in something called the conditioned emotional response. So let me try to set this up for you as far as the method. Basically, he took, I believe it was rabbits, and for these rabbits, he basically put them in a Skinner box, and he basically paired up a tone. So a tone would be turned on, that was the method, and then after a period of time, there would be a foot shock. And whenever the foot shock occurred with the tone, the animal would have 3 main responses. One response would actually be a freezing response. The organism would freeze in its cage. You'd also see an increase in heart rate and blood pressure. So on the first trial, the tone was the neutral stimulus. The foot shock was the unconditioned stimulus. And of course, the freezing, increased in heart rate and blood pressure was the unconditioned response. The question I have for you, actually it looks like this was done more in rats, or was it in rabbits? Or do they not say? Well, you can take either one here. It looks like it was rats here. So in trials after this, they would basically turn on the tone, and what do you think would start happening here? Yes, hopefully you figured out that this is classical conditioning, and after a series of trials, as soon as the tone was turned on, the animal would actually go into the freezing response and have the increase in heart rate and blood pressure. So what do we call this? This is called, as far as the result, this is called classical conditioning, right? So the idea is the tone itself would cause this particular response, and this is called the conditioned emotional response. If you know something's going to be particularly rotten in your life and it's going to cause a lot of anxiety, as soon as there's a stimulus preceding that, you'll learn to respond to that. So the conditioned emotional response often happens for humans as well. So the idea is you turn on the tone, and then the animal would actually have their freezing response, increase in heart rate and blood pressure. Oh, the other thing the organism would do, it would actually have a jumping response as well. So it would actually jump even when the tone was turned on. So hopefully you understand that in pretty simple detail there. The key question, if you're a cognitive neuroscientist, the key question is the following. What's going on inside the brain to allow this? What is going on inside the brain that's basically causing this classical conditioning to occur? And most of the research has actually focused on this idea of the amygdala. They've done a lot of cognitive neuroscience research on the amygdala. And they've basically found that it seems the amygdala is the key part of the brain that really works with emotions. And so in one situation, let's see if I can give you this the right way. In one situation, if you actually turn on the tone, but then if you destroy a pathway from the thalamus to the hippocampus, and you turn on the tone, the organism will not become conditioned. So it seems as if the thalamus going to the hippocampus, that's the part that's controlling the memory for the event. The organism does not remember. So if you destroy that pathway, which is what people in cognitive neuroscience like to do, then you basically lose the conditioning there. In another situation, what was very interesting was destroying some pathways from the amygdala. If you actually destroy the pathway from the amygdala to the hypothalamus, you'll basically find that if you destroy that particular pathway, you will not see the increases in heart rate and blood pressure. That will not be conditioned. So it's as if the connections from the amygdala to the hypothalamus are causing that conditioned response with the heart rate and the blood pressure increase. On the other hand, and this isn't in your outline, but if you destroy a connection between the amygdala and the periaqueductal gray, you'll actually lose the freezing response. The organism will not have the freeze response. So it seems as if, from the basis of this, the amygdala is the real key structure that really mediates the emotional response. And a cognitive neuroscientist would basically figure this out and then would be able to determine that when you destroy these connections to the amygdala, you basically lose the emotional response. So the big picture from this, the meaning, the amygdala seems to be the key spot where a lot of emotional learning seems to take place. And if you destroy various pathways going from the amygdala, you might lose some of this conditioning. I hope this makes sense. Type this up, use your book, and add a few more pieces of information from 439, and hopefully this will make sense to you. Thanks. Bye-bye.